One of the few monsters I've actually stopped hunting all the time is Rathian, generally because I usually feel bad for her. She usually gets the short end of encounters with apexes and, in all honesty, is done dirty. But I always thought about this, right? Why does she get done like this in these encounters? I thought she was just as formidable, if not slightly stronger, than her husband. Why is Pink Rathian an actual apex, and what does her aggression and armor have to really do with it? And if she's married to Rathalos, does that mean he's really a benefit if she gets bullied all the time? So today we're going to answer all of these questions. So be sure to comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends. And well, this is actually going to be a three-part section, so buckle up and enjoy the video. To start off, what would Rathian actually classify as if she isn't an apex? Now, while she can definitely take the role of it, this would definitely put her in a class I normally like to call the sub-apex class. Predators that can ultimately dominate an ecosystem, but only for a short while time until an actual apex actually shows up. This is mainly where Rathian kind of fits in, as she's just below apexes. And in all honesty, she could even share the place with Anjanath and Dashaguma, or Alpha Dashaguma, I should say, in my opinion. But she's definitely above them, as again, her turf wars literally show her bullying these other creatures. And believe it or not, I think this means she's likely the highest of these sub-apexes. With her, I would probably rank her close to the levels of Celtis Queen and Nursilla, who would also share that. But keep in mind, Rathian would have actually had a substantial food source for her as well. Considering the fact that she would bully Anjanath, meaning she could easily take kills from it, this also means she could likely rule a large majority of the territories that Anjanath normally inhabits as well. And so, this means that in the old world, or at least I should use the old world as an example, she had access to prey animals like Kechawacha, Yenkaku, what's the other one I'm thinking of? It was an aquatic creature, but it was, I guess you could say, somewhat land-based as well. But again, Rathian had access to a large majority of these creatures. Even some of the smaller predators like the bird wyverns of the raptorial lineage, and even in volcano areas, obviously things like Volvodon, Bacerios, and stuff like that. So you would have access to all these prey animals. But it does stop when you get into the apex or the dominant life form category. And Diablos is a prime example of this, with Diablos and Black Diablos of both, Rathians actually coming out on top at the end of the day. Now you might ask yourself, Legendary, why is this the case if, Pink Rathian's an actual apex? Well, believe it or not, I will be discussing this in a future video where I dive into the Diablos and Devil Joe, I guess you could say, relationship. But believe it or not, I don't think that Rathian is a match for adults. I don't even think Devil Joe is a match for adult males if they're at their peak. With adult males, or a peak bull Diablos, as I usually say in most of my videos, being so powerful that they actually are able to beat Black Diablos and earn the right to mate. So this means that a Devil Joe is likely targeting either tired and weakened individuals, or likely younger and inexperienced individuals. To which I do think Rathian could definitely take a young and inexperienced Diablos. However, for adults, nah, it's just not gonna happen. Now, what about her competition with actual apexes like Glavenus and Seregios? Well, believe it or not, I do agree with Unnatural History theory that Glavenus may actually be a raider of Rathian Nest, trying to kill off and eat her progenies. However, I also do think that Glavenus could just be a territorial dispute, and in all honesty, or basically kind of both in my opinion. You see, we do see Glavenus does track down Rathian to her nest in order to, well, either kill her or see if she's got any progenies for him to eat. And this is mainly due to, their desert interactions, where Rathian is pretty much a single mother in those environments. Now, you might ask yourself, why does Rathian nest in the deserts, right? Well, believe it or not, I do think the desert environments, and this may sound very, kinda controversial, but the desert environments are actually pretty good for Rathian to keep tracking because they have a more, I guess you could say, diverse cave network where Rathian and a lot of other predators could live in it. But again, with her nest in there, or probably at certain levels in the cave systems, this means that Rathian can honestly keep her progenies and her children safe. But it's also possible that she nests there out of a, I guess you could say, comfortability factor. And believe it or not, I do think Seregios is probably the biggest opposition to Rathian and even Rathalos in general. But Seregios seems to have it out for Rathians especially, to the point where, I mean, in Rise we actually see one just, well, you know, dominate and kill a Rathian, unfortunately. And I do think it is quite interesting that Rathian knew something was up here. Like, wait a minute, I know these shards, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Oh, it's you! Yeah, I'm gonna hightail it out of there. And unfortunately, Seregios will go out of their way to kill, and not sure if they eat, but I know somebody is gonna eat it. But just to kill a Rathian, just to reduce the competition. It's unfortunate, but again, the desert-based environments do provide a stable ecosystem for young Rathians, or Rathians in general, to raise their young. They could easily use the higher altitudes to keep away a large majority of the ground-based predators, but that just means that they're just vulnerable to those like Seregios, and I would probably say Sand Barioth as well, because again, they can fly, but a large majority of the carnivores, or, you know, creatures of the desert are strictly ground-based. So Rathian nesting there just makes sense. And then there's also the fact that Rathian is not as aggressive as Rathalos, meaning she lacks that testosterone. And believe it or not, Rathian is one of the more chilled out monsters. You could probably say it's more of a caution thing than anything, but Rathian doesn't view the hunters as a threat unless she is attacked. Meaning that Rathian may be intelligent enough to understand that the hunters could be beneficial for her, as again, we do kind of kill some of the animals that she could honestly use for like extra carrion later on and make it easier for her to raise her young. But there's also the fact that we likely get rid of a large majority of the predators in the region that could threaten her. So you might ask, well, if that's the case, then why is Pink Rathian so aggressive then, right? Well, believe it or not, let's go ahead and talk about that itself. So with Pink Rathian, what makes her an apex, right? Well, according to the book, not only is her armor thicker, much just as thick as in Azure Rathalos, if not probably stronger as well, but she has a higher muscle density, and she's a lot more aggressive. Now, the reason why her aggression is like that is because, again, she's pink. Being born in a more forest-like environment, it's not very good for camouflage, quite obviously. So how did Pink Rathians get by? Well, they become stronger, tougher, and more aggressive, and their poison is much more lethal. See, this is one of the few things that makes you curious on if Rathian was just maybe a bit more aggressive, maybe she would have been able to take that spot as an apex. And believe it or not, Pink Rathians are just absolutely and in all honesty, they're absolutely crazy. You know, the fact that these guys, you know, have a much higher potent poison to the point where they can cripple Bazagoose even when they're like rampaging, meaning that Pink Rathians are more or less the F around and find out kind when it comes to monsters. But again, it's their aggression. They're overly aggressive. They're just as aggressive as a male Rathalos, which actually does help it in a world where, you know, being pink isn't really suitable for a forest-based environment. However, the ones in the Coral Highlands may actually be a lot more chilled out, and this is due to the fact that now they can camouflage themselves. Now they can blend in. So Pink Rathian competing with the likes of Legiana, an apex monster in her own right, in its own right as well, and pretty much the top dog of the Coral Highlands. And then you also have, you know, sub-predators like Fulgor Anjanath, Ebony Odogaron, Nargacuja, Devil Joe, and what's the name? Ebony and Base Odogaron. All these predators basically would give a Pink Rathian a wide berth at that point. And again, it's not to say that, Pink Rathians are, are just, overly aggressive and they're super dangerous. No, they're lethal. They're absolutely perfect predators. Or probably not perfect. They're well armed predators in their own right. Keep in mind, we know that probably the most dangerous threat to a Pink Rathian would probably be Ebony Odogaron, Zinogre, and Nargacuja. Odogarons especially because their jaws are capable of biting through even the toughest shells of a wyvern. Even biting down on a Glavenus's neck. Even an acidic Glavenus who actually should have a much thicker armor layer than the likes of than a regular Glavenus. And keep in mind, it's got access to just about anything else around here. Even the likes of Coral Pookie Pookie and Palumo. However, it can camouflage. It can actually ambush these predators or ambush these creatures and stuff like that. And, well, Pink Rathians are just vastly superior to a regular Rathian. Simply because they have all these advantages. But again, their aggression comes from the fact that they had nowhere to hide. They had nowhere to really escape from, predators. So what they did was they became stronger, tougher, more durable, and their poison is just much more lethal, And the fact that they can take down and even beat off Elder Dragon level monsters is enough to say for itself. And the fact that they are also an apex makes you wonder, okay, so if a basic Rathian had these things, could she have been an apex? And in all honesty, she already has the thick shell down. We already know that. But the aggression, maybe I guess you could say stronger muscles and stuff like that, and then much more lethal poison. Not to say that Rathian's poison isn't lethal. She's got it in her jaw, her talons, her tail. She's poisonous all around. She should be one of the few wyverns you just don't mess with. But again, we do have the instances where they still get cooked by Diablos and stuff like that. Meaning again, well, I guess even apexes have certain levels to it, right? Now, while I do think a Pink Rathian is definitely capable of fighting against probably a Peak Bull and a Black Diablos, I think at the end of the day, it's really just home turf or home court advantage. You're not going to beat somebody who's, been in the desert all their life. It makes you wonder how Diablos versus Devil Joe or any other monster would actually go. Imagine if Diablos just straight up burrowed beneath a large majority of these other monsters. It would probably cook them, especially the likes of a Glavenus, Devil Joe, and Anjanath, because again, it is able to lift them over their head. Honestly, I do think it could definitely lift a Devil Joe as well, because it does have the neck muscles and far more impressive feats by being able to literally grab or literally flip an adult Glavenus over its neck, over its shoulders, like it's nothing. Just like, get off me, get off. And with Pink Rathian, so they have a hotter fire as well. I almost forgot to mention that. Stronger muscle mass. Okay, and, well, much more potent venom. So, if Rathian had these things, do I think she would have been an apex? Absolutely. I actually do think she would have been an apex. And again, possibly stronger, if not maybe better than her husband, albeit Rathalos has its reasons for being the apex. There's a reason why he's called the King of the Skies. But let's move on to that point. Why is Rathalos an apex? Well, believe it or not, this actually comes from a couple things. Now, while you could probably say Rathian should be physically stronger than her mate, that may be true, but Rathalos has an edge. He's the master, or if not, the king of the skies for the reason. He's more agile, he's more athletic, he's more skilled when it comes to flying. And yes, he is the most skilled flyer, more skilled than Bezogus, more skilled than Seragios, and more skilled than Astalos. You see, the thing about Rathalos that gives him a significant edge is not only because he likely has a lot more firepower than his mate, but because he is just simply skilled when it comes to aerial fights. Plus, again, his ways of attacking. Him using his tail very rarely, yeah, I guess you could say that is a more of a Rathian thing, but again, he does use it. However, he mainly attacks with his talons, his poison talons. And keep in mind, this is no different than an Azor Rathalos either, with Azor Rathalos having a much more potent poison than his, well, normal counterpart. And with the amount of firepower that both Rathaloses have, I actually do think that may be the reason why he's in Apex. He's aggressive, more aggressive than his mate. And maybe that is because, Pink Rathian might be the only thing to outdo a Rathalos when it comes to its aggression. You see, with this kind of mindset that Rathalos has, it's the reason why he's able to enter the Elder's Recess. It's the reason why he's able to contend with stronger apexes that no other low-tier monster could. I mean, this dude is literally fighting against Leviathans, Flying Wyverns, Snake Wyverns, and even Flying Wyverns of the cat lineage like Tigrex. I mean, he's able to endure all this a lot more because of his high levels of adrenaline and aggression as well. I do think Rathalos does have a lot more adrenaline. By the way, why have we never seen Raydal versus Rathalos? Obviously, Monster Slayer Squad has probably did it right. But again, it's kind of interesting. We never see Raydal interact with Rathian, really. And this is why I definitely say the Windward Plains may actually be one of the safer areas for Rathian to go to because of its, its apex really not bothering with it. So it's pretty safe overall. And believe it or not, Rathalos in the, the Guiding Lance as well, may actually be a lot tougher than y'all think. This thing does have to interact with other monsters and even go into other areas of this connected land, including the frost regions and, well, even the desert and volcano parts of the area. And the same thing with Azor Rathalos, meaning that they have to interact with a large majority of these monsters, like Bonbaro or Diablos and stuff like that. Meaning that Rathian's or Rathalos' skill is more or less a statement to its survival. Its acrobatic lineage and, well, its overall aggression actually do help it in the end. So, does this mean Rathalos is a benefit for Rathian? Yes and no. Because you are married to the King of the Skies or the mascot of Monster Hunter, this does come with its fair share of enemies. However, this is why Rathian does have her specific roar to call her mate. Both of them together are just absolutely lethal. The strength of a Rathian coupled with the speed, agility, and the aggression of a Rathalos. With them both rearing their young, they actually have a higher success rate. It is possible for Rathalos to probably have more than one mate, meaning that you may actually see a male or, a Azor Rathalos or a regular Rathalos with a Rathian and maybe even a Pink Rathian in the Ancient Forest. I've actually seen it before, and they actually get along greatly, even sleeping together. So, it's not hard to say that Rathalos may actually benefit, and Rathian, basic Rathian, may actually benefit from having essentially a sister wife, if you will. So with that being said here, unfortunately, Rathian is in that weird spot. She doesn't have the aggression, nor the testosterone, or the aggression and testosterone needed in order to get the, I guess you could say, results she wants. I do believe if she was a bit more aggressive, a lot of these apexes likely wouldn't mess with her. Plus, if she actually worked on her muscle mass and stuff like that, I think she would be a lot stronger, and this would actually put her in a decent level. So, with that being said here, that's going to be all for today, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this little free time or, kind of obvious video, but hey, please comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends. This is Legendary Grimlock, and I hope you guys have a blessed day.